insightful, provocative, honest to a fault. You better find your safe space. The Nick Johnson Show is about to begin.
Well, welcome to episode number 2 of the show. My name is Nick Johnson. I am your host. This is the Nick Johnson Show. You can find me at facebook.com/NickJohnsonCT, YouTube, The Nick Johnson Show, SoundCloud, The Nick Johnson Podcast, and I think that's about it. Shout out to bensound.com for the intro. I think that takes care of everything that I got to say. Actually, no, public disclaimer, it is the 4th of July. It's a very special edition of the show, and the only thing that's special about it is that it's the 4th of July. But I guess I should say don't drink and drive. Also, don't play with fireworks if you're drunk. Or don't play with them, I guess, either way. Just be careful. Just celebrate your freedom as responsibly or as irresponsibly as you want, I suppose. Just don't hurt anyone or yourself. But yes, today is my most favorite holiday ever. It is American Independence Day, and there's nothing better than it. I'm even wearing the Freedom shirt. You gotta enjoy it. You really can't not have a good day on a day like this. Today we're going to give you one of the most watered down American Revolution history stories I could ever give you. It really is awful, and I'm going to own that right now. But the reason I'm going to tell you a couple of these things, I just want to set the stage for what I see as something that's just very interesting in modern day America. Now, the American Revolution basically started when the Declaration of Independence was signed, and that's the document that's behind me right now with the awful glare. That is one of the most important documents in American history. It founded our country as we know it, and it was when 13 colonies decided that they wanted to become independent and sovereign states. And Congress got together and signed this piece of paper. There's discrepancies about when exactly it was signed, but nonetheless, we celebrate the 4th of July on July 4th. So we're going to go with that day. We're not going to argue with it. So a couple of things that led to the Declaration of Independence. Now, again, for the third time, this is going to be a terrible history lesson. But I just wanted to bring up a couple major points in American history that led to the American Revolution and the Declaration of Independence. So we had what was the Stamp Act of 1765. And essentially, long story short, it was this tax that was imposed to pay for military, for the British to have the military over to protect the colonies. And it was imposed through taxing paper, this stamped paper that all the legal documents for the colonies were supposed to be on. Basically, it was as if you had to use, you're paying to use a certain piece of paper that you had to use every day for your day-to-day activities. We didn't like that so much. Then you had the Boston Tea Party, the famous Boston Tea Party of 1773. That was when we stormed the Boston Harbor and dumped boxes and bags of tea into the harbor, into the sea, in defiance of the Tax Act for the tea that was in place and imposed earlier of that same year. Apparently, we were big tea guys back in the day. I think we would be more upset about it if it was coffee now. I think I'm kind of accurate in saying it. I think you would find me doing the same thing. I'm very much a coffee addict, and if I have to start paying a coffee tax, you bet your ass there's going to be some problems because of it. But we stormed the harbor because we were done. We were fed up. We're just tired of getting taxed with what the claim was no taxation without representation. The tax money that was being taken from us, we felt as if it was just being spent recklessly. We weren't getting the protections that we felt were necessary or justified for the tax money that was taken out. And we wanted freedom. We wanted some all-American badass freedom. So what did we do? We signed a piece of paper that declared that we were free from British tyranny. And it's interesting to me. Does anyone think it's crazy that about 245 years ago we stormed the Boston Harbor, claiming no taxation without representation? If you fast forward to 2017, now we're storming the streets, claiming more taxes, more taxes. More specifically, tax the rich, tax them. So now what it's become is tax them, represent us, rather than no taxation without representation. Do you see how we've lost kind of our American way there? And what I mean by that is that we wanted proper representation for the money that was being taken out. Now we aren't even concerned with the reckless spending and the massive amount of debt that we've accrued as a country. We're just more worried about who we're taxing, so that way we could pay for things that we really can't afford. That's a very big problem, and that's a very big difference. We realized in 1776 that being taxed excessively and being governed by a reckless body of government, an overreaching body of government, was not indicative of a free country. It didn't line up with what the founders viewed as some of our natural rights. And that paved the way for what is the second line of the Declaration of Independence, which is basically the premise of our independence. And it reads, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, otherwise more commonly known as freedom." Hashtag freedom. That's what we celebrate freedom, right? It's what we call it. But this is what we understood. This was known to us in 1776, that excessive taxes, excessive government overreach wasn't going to permit us to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So we decided to hell with it, and we did our thing. And now I can't help but draw the parallel, and this is why I think history is interesting, and it's not really my expertise. That's for damn sure. But I just like to look back at historical events and kind of lay them over what I'm seeing now and see how it compares. So 241 years ago, we signed a document saying that was based off of the fact that we're getting taxed too much and we wanted our freedom. Now we have segments of our society and of our generation that goes out into the streets and begs for more taxation. And it's just crazy to me. It's absolutely crazy to me. It seems as if we've almost forgot American history, and maybe people like me shouldn't be giving watered-down American history lessons. But I think I make a pretty clear point. I think we definitely have some big differences from the way we view things and the way we understand freedom and the way we understand our lives. And it leads me to ask the question, would you have signed the Declaration of Independence back in 1776? Understand that this wasn't necessarily popular opinion. I'm sure many colonists wanted their independence and wanted their freedom, but there were still loyalists to the British, and that was evident throughout the Revolutionary War. But we don't really think of this anymore. We don't really look at it that way. We have so many luxuries now. We have so many different ways to celebrate our freedom that you literally don't really think about what it took and what happened back then in order for us to be able to celebrate in the most ridiculous ways that we do now. But would you have signed the Declaration of Independence? It's just that, to me, I think is just a great question, and you got to look at what you feel now politically, and I don't know. I can't help but wonder what your answer is. I think we would want to say yes. I think I definitely would have been one to sign, but that's because I don't see myself lining up with the views of somebody that would have been opposed to this at the time. I am one for no taxation without representation. I think we're taxed excessively as a country now, especially if you're a Connecticut resident like me. You get a tax for walking out your door. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And I think with a lot of the access to distractions that we have now, even just social media itself, it's a very good distractor from viewing life differently. And what I mean by that is if we didn't have as many distractions or as many things to do now, would we be a little bit more focused on what's going on around us and the way we're being taxed and the way that our freedom are being if freedom is being infringed on to some degree, especially if you live in Connecticut. Just food for thought on this day when you're stuffing your face with food, as I will be shortly. So yeah, just something to give a little bit of thought about. I want to thank you for joining me on a very short episode number 2 of The Nick Johnson Show. You can find me at facebook.com/The Nick Johnson. I'm sorry, facebook.com/Nick Johnson CT. YouTube, The Nick Johnson Show, and SoundCloud, The Nick Johnson Podcast. That's it. Until next time, have a good holiday.